Hello and welcome to BME Horizon Hot Topics webinar. I am Borbála Schenk, the Chief European Research Funding Advisor of the Budapest University of Technology and Economics. My special field is supporting the researchers of the Budapest University of Technology and Economics in their successful participation in the Horizon Europe Framework Program. The Budapest University of Technology and Economics is a leading university of technology, natural sciences, and economics in Hungary. We have 8 faculties, and the key research areas include ICT, artificial intelligence, sustainable energy, accumulator technologies, vehicle technology, biotechnology, nanophysics, and also disaster prevention with modern engineering methods. This webinar is brought to you by the Center for University and Industry Cooperation, called BME FIEC. This is the FIEC team you can see on the picture, and FIEC is the unit that organizes, coordinates, and strengthens the innovation-related activities of the university, including the Horizon Europe support. We have started this webinar in 2021 in November with the aim of creating discussion and raising awareness for novel research trends and concepts that shape the European research area nowadays, and that are reflected also in the Horizon Europe Framework Program. We are streaming these webinars live weekly every Monday at 1 o'clock, and the recordings are available afterwards on the homepage, which is horizon.bme.hu/webinars. We have dealt with open science, citizen science, societal impact of research, research ethics, co-creation topics, and each time we invite a guest presenter, and we can listen to interesting approaches, perspectives, and practical experiences on a specific topic. We would like to engage with you. We would like to spark discussion on these topics. So we would like to ask you to please use Slido for submitting your question or your comment. If you are watching us on the horizon.bme.hu webpage, please use the Slido that is embedded on the webpage. If you are following us on YouTube, please use the Slido link and the code we provided to interact with us. Today, we are going to have another interesting citizen science topic, which is engaging with citizen seismologists in Haiti, challenges and perspectives. In October, a citizen science event, I met with Laure Fallou, who is a research officer at the Euro-Mediterranean Seismological Center. And we started a discussion of a very interesting citizen science topic, citizen science project. And I'm very happy to have her here as our guest presenter today to talk about this project and talk about the experiences of a citizen seismology project and research. Let me just introduce you, Laure, very briefly. Laure has a background in sociology, and she has been working for the Euro-Mediterranean Seismological Center for the past 5 years. Working in a seismic institution when one has a background in sociology can sound surprising, but it's actually essential to understand how people react when there's an earthquake, what kind of information they need, what kind of information they can provide, and how we can create a useful information communication system with them. The Euro-Mediterranean Seismological Center has been a pioneer in citizen seismology. The center developed tools, for example, the last Quake app, the Twitter bot of the same name, and websites to crowdsource eyewitnesses' reaction and collect testimonies in case of felt earthquake. In turn, they provide them with timely data on seismic issues. Laure has been researching several topics at the border between sociology and seismology, such as how cultural factors impact the way people react to an earthquake, or citizens' reaction to earthquake early warnings. She has also been researching and taking part in several citizen seismology projects in Mayotte, a French island, or Haiti, which she's going to focus on during the presentation. Thank you very much, Laure, for accepting our invitation, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction and the invitation. I'm very pleased to be here with you. I'm going to share my screen now, and I think it should be working. Yes, perfect. Can you all see it?
Absolutely perfect.
Perfect. So today I'm going to present a project we've been leading with a lot of colleagues whose names are here and that I want to thank for their collaboration. I'm going to present to you how we engage with the citizens. So I think there will be a lot of similar things that you may have heard if you followed Alice Shepard's presentation a few weeks ago. Engaging with citizen seismologists has been very challenging, and I'm very pleased to share with you what we've done and what we still have to do for the next year. So to start, maybe a little bit of context. So you may all have heard about the 2010 earthquake, which is one of the deadliest seismic disasters known today, and it left many political, economic, social, psychological scars in the country. But what is less known is that at the time, back in 2010, there were really a lack of seismic sensors in the country, so very little was known about the seismic context in Haiti. And there was also a very low seismic risk culture among the population. So people may not be aware at the time of the seismic risk or about what to do in case of earthquake. So all of the 2010 earthquake made kind of science that the risk reduction was a key issue for the country's future, and that we needed to address risk reduction if we wanted to help Haiti develop itself. So in this context, we tried to think about what could be done to help in this risk reduction process. And we thought that the classic approach, that is a top-down approach, so you just provide an information to the public and that's it. It was not really functioning well in this kind of country and also in other countries. But and so we tried to think about a new approach, and we seized the development of a new technology as an opportunity to do that. So what you see here is a Raspberry Shake. So for those of you who may not be really aware of seismic sensors, it's a low-cost seismic sensor, and it is very small, and it doesn't cost so much compared to classic seismic sensors. So we decided to take these seismic sensors and to use them in a citizen seismology approach. So we decided we could put these sensors at volunteers' place and observe what that made and what that produced. We had two objectives. So one is to collect seismic data to complement the national seismic network. So as I said, there was really few data available. So that's putting more Raspberry Shake could help collect more seismic data. And the second objective would be to engage with the population. So this Raspberry Shake were an opportunity to go at some volunteer place and discuss earthquakes and see what it could produce. We wanted also to understand the risk perception of people in Haiti and how they could use these tools. So to do that, you may notice that the two objectives are quite different, and they are related to two disciplines. One is more seismology and the other is sociology. So we had a team that was multidisciplinary and that was also international. So we had researchers from both Haiti and France. And in the end, these Raspberry Shake that you see here were kind of making a paradigm shift. So we didn't only consider that seismic networks were composed of sensors, but we also considered it was very important to include the humans around them as a true part of the network. So both scientists and citizens were part of this network, not only the sensors. Building a citizen seismology project in Haiti was quite challenging on several points. So first, we had to find people who had power and internet access to run this project, because that's what the Raspberry Shake required. We also had to find people that were interested in the project. That's a challenge for all citizen science project, I guess. We had to take into account the science literacy level of the people around there, which may be different from people in developed countries. We had to take the cultural context into account. So there's a strong voodoo culture, for example, in Haiti, that can make different explanation for earthquakes and not only tectonic plates. So we need to take that into account. And we also had to take into account the 2010 earthquake trauma, because we didn't want to add further anxiety. So we needed to take that into account. So what did we do? First, we installed 15 seismic sensors at volunteers' houses or offices. So you have the map here, so you can see where we put them. We also created a dedicated website for seismic data visualization. So you have the link here if you want to have a look. It was really for volunteers and other people to have access to the data, so that it's open and it's accessible for anyone. We also translated the Lastquake app in Creole. So Lastquake is the app that is developed by the EMSC, and it is an information app for felt earthquakes. It's run all over the world, but it had to be in Creole, the local language, so that it was usable by the people over there. We also created a WhatsApp group to gather the community and also to offer technical and scientific support for the volunteers. Why WhatsApp? Because we found out that actually it's the main, not only messaging app, but communication and information channel. So people use it all the time for any matter. For example, if there are petrol shortage, they will discuss that around a Facebook group, or if there are some attacks in those streets or anything, they just go on WhatsApp and chat. So we needed to be there because that's how people communicate in Haiti. But installing the Raspberry Shake was not enough. We really needed to understand how the volunteers were engaging with the tool and what we could do best for them. So for that, we led 15 semi-directive sociological interviews. So I'm not sure everyone is familiar with the term. So it's just interviews where you ask questions, but you also let a certain level of freedom for the people to speak of what they want to speak to you about. These interviews had three objectives. So the first one was to understand how they adopted the tool and how they used it. We also wanted to assess how the tool had affected their risk perception and potentially if it had affected their community's risk perception. And the last thing was we wanted to improve the project. So we really wanted to give a space for the Raspberry Shake host to speak to us. And also, of course, because of the COVID situation, but also for security reasons, we had to do that to adapt the methodology and to do these interviews by phone and not face-to-face. But that was still working in a way. So what did we find? First, they spoke a little bit of the 2010 earthquake and how it traumatized them. But finally, we found that most of our hosts were not the most traumatized by the earthquake, and they were mainly speaking of their communities traumatized and not themselves. But they also showed a strong interest and curiosity. So, of course, there's a small bias because as they were volunteer, we can imagine that they were already interested in earthquake, but still it increased during the project, which is still interesting. And we also found that they were really proud of being part of the project, which is still a nice thing to find. And they were really proud first to contribute to science, but also to contribute to risk reduction. And that's a very specific about citizen seismology. It's because, of course, it is a science, but there's also the risk aspect that is very important and that can help engaging people. And finally, they were very proud to be part of the network. So they were proud to be working with researchers and with scientists from Haiti, but also from France, and to be considered as a true part of the network. We also found, and that was very interesting, that they felt empowered. So in citizen science, we always hope that there will be a form of empowerment, but they really showed us how empowered they felt. So they felt empowered to be part of the network and to really be actors of the project. They also had a true collective interest. So they felt that, of course, they had a small personal interest in having the raspberry shake at home because it was interesting for them, etc. But they truly believed that could help the society as a whole. And by doing that, they were kind of palliating for the deficiency of the state. So they were doing something that the government was not doing, and that could help in the future the country's development. So that was very interesting to see how this empowerment was very present in their speech. However, we found also that the project had room for improvement and that they really needed some support from the project team. So, for example, they needed technical support, for example, to understand the tool to better understand the website, for example, or the kind of data that is very technical for the moment. They needed help for that. They also needed help on a scientific level to learn more about earthquakes or about how seismology is done, what is still to be known, what are the limits of seismology also, for example. So they were, I'm just going to give you an example of that. There was a series of earthquakes in the early January. And there were a lot of questions about why there are so many earthquakes, what is the risk, can we predict earthquakes, etc. So we needed to respond to these questions. And we also found out during the interviews that they need educational support. Indeed, one of the objectives of the project is that we don't, we not only discuss with the volunteers, but we also have access to the whole community because we only have 15 volunteers for the moment. So we really wanted them to kind of be ambassadors of the project and of citizen seismology. But that was really hard for them because they really felt that they could awaken the trauma around their community. So they need some educational support from us to help them communicate that to their communities. For instance, when some volunteers for the moment, during their interviews, they told us that some of their neighbors were afraid that the raspberry shake could cause earthquakes. And of course, they can't, but we need to take these beliefs into account and to really acknowledge them, so that we can help the volunteers to be to explain to their neighbors, etc., what the Raspberry chain can and cannot do, and how it may be important to get this data. So with all that, we set up a list of improvements for the project. So first, we need to improve the information system and the communication system as well. So we will adapt the content to cultural factors. So for example, to the language, but also to the literacy level. To the technology use so we saw a lot of people use WhatsApp, so we may do something about that, but also their beliefs. We also need to integrate volunteers better in the network. So that means first more links between scientists and volunteers. So we need to create events if possible, but also to continue with this WhatsApp group. And also we need to create more link between volunteers so that they can exchange questions and that they can help themselves, for example, with this ambassador role. For the ambassador role, we will create some pedagogical support to explain, for example, what the Raspberry Pi can do. And we need also to make the project sustainable. And for that, we're going to create more links with the local institutions. We have projects to put Raspberry Pi in some schools, and we also want to get the civil protection on board. And as a conclusion, I think I want to take the example of the earthquake that happened in August and sadly had some deadly consequences again. But during these earthquakes, we had our first test of the project so far, because it was the first very important earthquake since we had started the project. And we found out that the WhatsApp group was really used, and it has been useful, for example, for both citizens and scientists. So the citizens were able to ask the questions that about, for example, the next earthquake that were going to happen, if we could know where they will happen, etc. So then scientists could answer. But it was also very useful for the scientists, because they could ask the volunteers where the damage were happening, if they knew anything, and if they knew about any rumors that were circulating, so that we could communicate in advance and try to debunk this potential misinformation. And I think what it shows is that understanding volunteers' motivation, obstacles, and expectation is very, very essential when we are doing citizen science project, and it really enhanced the chance of sustaining the project. And also, if we want another conclusion from a citizen seismology point of view, is that we really need to consider the citizens as a true part of the network, and that it really increases the efficiency not only of the network but also of the risk reduction. And I think that was my last slide. So thank you very much for your attention. I'm very pleased to answer all your questions. That was a short presentation, but I'd like to share ideas now with you and answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Laure. That was very interesting. I would like to ask you to please stop sharing the screen so that I could share Slido screen. We have received a lot of questions that we just, that is the screen. Also, I would like to call the attention of the viewers that we have this poll. Please let us know which city you are watching us from. We would be happy to know. Okay, and we have received these 6 questions, but let me just start with a kind of a basic one to make it clear. So the citizens in Haiti, they're using this Raspberry Pi. They are providing data to you, And what is the communication from EMSC to the citizens? So what do you communicate to them?
Okay, so there's actually two separate things. So we have the volunteers who are part of the project, and they are so they have a Raspberry Shake at their home, and the EMSC is running an app which is available to all citizens. So even at home, you can download it right now if you want. But it's more about, but the EMSC is only providing information about felt earthquake, whereas the Raspberry Shake, they can actually monitor all earthquakes, even those who are not felt. Yes. Okay. Is that answering the question?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. So let's see. How did you select the people you interviewed?
Right. Yes. I think I'm going to do a little bit of methodology here. So we first selected all the 15 volunteers who hosted the Raspberry Shake for, I think, between 1 and 2 years. And then we decided to do the interviews. So we did the interviews with all the people who volunteered. And so maybe one question would be how we selected the volunteers. That's an important question, I guess. And so we were kind of not new, but we didn't know where to start. So we had people actually coming to us. So that was basically network at the beginning. And also we were really confronted to the problem of electricity and internet access. So when we knew someone who was interested, well, we were just providing a Raspberry Shake. And we also paid attention to get a seismic network, in the sense of we needed to get the sensors at some location to get it more like efficient.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, what was the government's reaction? Did you interact with them?
Not so much, because, well, I don't know if you heard, but for example, the president was killed in his residence I think it was last August. So there were really a lot of problems of, political, economic, security problem in Haiti. So we didn't really interacted with them. Yet we think it's very important, of course, that it's not only French people doing anything in Haiti. So we are working with the BME, which is the local institution for seismic risk in Haiti. So they're working with us. So that's already something. But no interaction with the government yet.
Okay. How is this project funded? Is it a national project or a European project?
No, it's a national project in France, and it's actually two projects. I mean, we had the first project, and then we just now got the following project, but it's always French government money. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Let's see the next one. What language did you use for the interviews? I should have clustered that up with the
yes.
The first one.
Actually, we try to be as close as possible to the people we interviewed. So we teamed up with always one French and one Asian interviewer. And we did the interview mostly in French with a little bit of Asian, and also one volunteer is American. So we did it in English.
Yeah, this language issue is also like a hot topic in citizen science project.
Indeed. Yes, and also there are so many things that you can't really express well in French or Asian. So it was very important for us to have a native speaker during the interviews. Yet we would like to have really face-to-face interviews just to create more bounds and more like a safer place for people to explain all their ideas and thoughts. So, for example, during the interviews, we had a very small amount of insight about voodoo culture, whereas we know that it is of course something, but the fact that it was on the phone, it didn't really help getting these insights. So we're going to try and do more face-to-face interviews next time.
Absolutely. Okay, I think I will address this question now. That happened. I'm sorry that we received as the latest, but I think that this just comes here. Isn't 15 people a small sample size for mapping the seismic culture of the country? How can this project be scaled up?
That's absolutely true. And we don't pretend that we're going to know everything about risk culture, seismic risk culture, thanks to in the interview. So we also did an online interview, but it somehow was biased. So it was an online questionnaire about seismic risk culture. But it was online, so that's already a problem in Haiti, and so we're trying to do something more. So for the moment, we don't pretend at all that we assessed seismic risk culture. It was more we assessed the seismic risk culture of the volunteers, which is a sample bias, but still they are all volunteers. So we just acknowledge that they are just our volunteers, but we need still to assess their seismic risk culture. Also because it's important, if we consider that they are going to be some ambassadors around their community, we need to know what are they going to explain, and to what extent they are going to explain scientific facts or not, etc.
Absolutely. How often do you keep in touch with the volunteers on a weekly basis, or how are the dynamics of this?
So I guess it depends who on the project. So there's a technical team that is in touch with the volunteers as soon as they have a problem, or as soon as we know that, for example, the seismic sensor is not connected to the internet. So then we just have a call to them, and then it's more when there are some earthquakes, or when they hear something about earthquake, they just communicate with the WhatsApp group. And I would say we have exchanges through the WhatsApp group every week or so, usually.
Okay, thank you. Did you manage to evoke the interest of young people, even kids?
Not yet, no. So that's part of the second phase of the project, and we are going to be more involved in schools. And I think that would be very important because, for instance, they haven't known, for the youngest of them, the 2010 earthquake. So that would be very interesting to see what they got from that. Do they hear about it, and what is the transmission of it?
Absolutely. And how do you plan to do that? How do you plan to attract the attention?
So we have a special part of the project that is dedicated for schools, and we have experts in school seismology at school. So they are just going to get in touch with the teachers, find schools with internet access, and install a Raspberry Shakes that is visible to everyone. And of course, as in many citizen science projects, when you reach kids, then you hope to reach the parents, etc. So we'll see how that works. But yes, schools mainly.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned that the volunteers were proud to contribute to science. How did you explain the science behind it?
See, what we did is we installed the Raspberry Shake. We explained a little bit of the technical part and how they could visualize the data. But then we found out that the thing is, for earthquake, there are a lot of earthquakes, but you don't feel them most of the time. And they were really interested in the fact that there were so many earthquakes, but they were not feeling it. And then they got interested in, can we know if an earthquake is going to provoke another earthquakes, etc. But the thing is, for the moment, most of our volunteers were already kind of interested in seismology, and so they knew already a little bit of science at the beginning. I don't know if that kind of answered the question, or
yeah, absolutely, and it was great to hear that so this is one of the one of the most important incentives, as I remember Alice Shepard's presentation, that the citizens are proud to contribute to science. They are proud to be part of this whole research process.
But I think something that was kind of paradoxical, then they were really proud, and they kind of discovered that we could do much more if we had more data, but they also had some, how to say it, like non-feasible expectations. So they at some point they came to the idea that they could maybe help predict earthquake one day, and we can't actually do that for the moment. So it was a bit paradoxical to see them go through this process of getting more and more excited, and sometimes a little bit too much. So we kind of need to balance this expectation and to say, yes, okay, that's already something, and that's already a lot to get this data, but we're not going to be able to prevent any earthquakes or to reinvent the whole wheel, or yes, manage expectations a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Citizen science is a great way to map seismic risk culture. Can you elaborate on other strategies that could be as effective as this approach?
Whoa.
That's a tough one.
Yes. Other strategies to map seismic risk culture. Good question. I'm not sure I'm able to answer to that. I'm sorry.
No problem.
I guess we need, but yes, I mean, we really need to make more surveys, but I think in this specific cultural context, we can't just rely on statistic data, and we really need to go and see the people around them or around there to discuss and to get all the details about why earthquakes are created, etc., which are for a lot of them are not scientific reasons. If we think about the creation of the earthquakes and why there are some earthquakes, so we really need to take that into account.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's more social science in that case.
Absolutely. How does participants' excitement and pride can be turned into actions to mitigate earthquake hazards?
Well, that's a good question. I think for the moment, it's already the first step. So we got them interested, and we got them proud enough to be talking about that to others, etc. So now we really need to get some actions done and to get them ready in case of earthquakes. The problem is there are a lot to do. For example, we are not going to get them to reconstruct their whole houses, and if they fall, I mean, that would be part of the risk culture, but we can't do everything. So first, I think the first step for us will be to make some prevention and teach the drop cover, all done gestures, and to make sure they're as ready as they can. And the more informed people they would be, the better.
Absolutely. Thank you. If I may paraphrase this question that just came in a bit, what was the most challenging cultural preconception that you had to deal with?
Or preconception?
The cultural preconception, I guess, on behalf of the citizens.
Okay. Yeah.
So, for example, you mentioned that someone believed the raspberry shake to cause earthquakes.
Well, actually, I think sadly we didn't have to. We were not enough confronted to these preconceptions because of the methodology and the fact that we were not enough with the people. But I think, yes, so the fact that the raspberry shake can cause earthquake was one. There were also some mistrust that maybe the tool could be a spying tool, so that we would know actually what was going on in their houses, which is not exactly, I mean, if you really pay attention to one raspberry shake, you can know like if a person is at home or not in some in some way. So, I mean, there are legitimate doubts to have, and it's good also that people could have questions. But
what do you do if these preconceptions emerge?
Well, it's all a matter of trust and of explaining. So of course we need to acknowledge that and to understand why they believe it. And it's one of the volunteers told us that Haiti is a country of magic. So we need to take that into account and we're not going to say there's no magic, because there is magic in Haiti. So we need just to explain that this precise tool is not creating earthquake, and that so far we don't know what can cause earthquake, but that's just monitoring, etc. So we just need to explain as much as we can, and also show them that we can be trusted. And so we work with people that are actually trusted in Haiti, and that for that in seismology, yes.
Okay, thank you. And the last question. I'm sorry, just go ahead.
No, sorry. No, I was going to say also we need to work on our own preconception, because we arrive with our vision of earthquake are caused by tectonic plates, etc. And we need to understand that not everyone think like that. So yes, we need to also work on our preconception.
That's a very important issue. Thank you for mentioning it. And the last question that just arrived. You mentioned drop, cover, and hold. Is this an appropriate message for Haitians, or does it need to be tweaked and improved?
Hey, very interesting question. There's a whole lot of literature about that, and it really needs to be adapted to all contexts. It's just for the moment, it's the easiest message that has been formulated for earthquake risk. But yes, of course, we could and we will work on what is the best message. Just for the moment, there's no specific phrase in Haiti, so we will, of course, work on that for sure. And the safety measures to take all depends on so many factors that we need to adapt it. That's absolutely right.
Okay, thank you very much. Let us just see the poll for a moment. Yeah, so please just share with us where you're watching us from. We'll be eager to know. And as we are very close to the end of the session, I would like to wrap it up by thanking Laure for being our guest today. I'm sure that we will follow the developments and achievements of your project. And thank you very much for showing such practical perspective on citizen science, which researchers can use in their fields as well, techniques and methods and approaches. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much to you.
Thank you. And I would like to thank our audience today. Thank you for being with us. We are not going to meet next week, but the week after with another interesting open science topic. We are going to have two guests from the EUROC Research Center from Italy. And we are going to see how that research center incentivizes open science. And also we are going to have a young researcher as a guest who has just received an Open Science Research Award. And we will get to know what he does in open science, in terms of open science in his own research. So see you in 2 weeks. And have a nice rest of the day. Goodbye.